I can't speak in English. Sorry. How do you feel when I say this phrase without even attempting to try another phrase? It seems easy to say, but it doesn't feel good, right? Welcome to today's podcast where we dive into the struggles, triumphs, and hilarious moments of learning English as a non-native speaker. And I'm your favorite host, Dave.
And I'm Emma. Whether you're just starting out or you've been learning for years, this is the place for you. Today, we're talking about that all too familiar feeling of saying, I can't speak English.
How does that sound to you? It's such a simple phrase to say, yet it carries a weight that doesn't sit quite right, does it? It's like closing a door before even peeking through the window. Easy to utter, but it leaves a lingering unease, as if you've given up without giving yourself a chance. Doesn't it feel better to try, stumble, and grow rather than stop before you even start?
Absolutely. That moment when you freeze up, your mind goes blank and you're like, why did I even try? But here's the thing. Saying, I can't speak English is actually the first step to saying, I can. It's all part of the journey.
Let's start by talking about the struggles of speaking English as our first segment. Emma, what was your biggest struggle when you first started speaking English?
Where do I even begin? For me, it was the fear of sounding stupid. I'd overthink every sentence, worrying about my grammar, pronunciation, and whether people would judge me.
I felt that so much. It's like your brain goes into overdrive, right? You're not just thinking about what to say, you're also thinking about how to say it, whether it's correct, and what the other person will think if it's not perfect. Once I remembered trying to order coffee and I said, I want a coffee. Hot, please? The barista just stared at me like I was speaking another language.
That's the thing. English can be so unpredictable. Like, why does read, pronounced read, and read, sounded pronounced red, look the same but sound different? It's like the language is playing tricks on us.
And don't even get me started on idioms. Someone once told me, it's raining cats and dogs. And I was like, where? I don't see any animals.
Exactly. And then there are words that sound the same but mean completely different things, like eye and ice. One is something you see with, and the other is frozen water. But if someone speaks fast, they almost sound identical.
Oh, and what about words that look the same but have two meanings, like right? It can mean the correct answer or it can mean the direction. So imagine someone says, turn right if you're right. I'd be like, wait, what?
That's so true. And it's not just words. There are phrases that completely change depending on how they're used. For example, if someone says, I need to wind down, they mean they want to relax. But the wind is strong today refers to the weather. And yet, both wind, like breeze, and wind, like relax, are spelled the same.
It's obviously confusing for non-native speakers. I remember when I first heard break a leg before a performance, I was terrified. Why would anyone say that? Are they trying to curse me?
English is full of these little traps. But here's the good news. Everyone struggles with this, even native speakers. It's not about being perfect. It's about making progress.
Exactly. If you're learning English and struggling with pronunciation, weird grammar rules, or confusing words, just know you're not alone. We've all been there. The key is to keep practicing and not be afraid of making mistakes.
That's right. So don't worry if you say something funny like, I want a coffee hot, please. Just laugh it off and try again. Eventually it gets easier.
Let's talk about why mistakes are your best friend. A lot of people are terrified of making them, but honestly, mistakes are your best friend when learning English.
Totally. Every mistake is a learning opportunity. Like if you say, I go to the store yesterday, instead of I went to the store yesterday, someone will correct you and boom, you've just learned the past tense. It's like your brain takes a little mental snapshot of that mistake, and next time, you'll probably get it right.
Exactly. And the more mistakes you make, the more you learn. It's like leveling up in a video game. You can't beat the boss without losing a few times first. Imagine playing a game where you never make mistakes. Boring, right? Learning English is the same. Mistakes are just part of the process.
That's such a great analogy. And here's the thing. The mistakes you make often stick with you in a funny way. I remember when I first started learning English, I wanted to say, I am full after eating a big meal, but instead I said, I am fool. My friends burst out laughing and I was so embarrassed. But guess what? I never made that mistake again.
That's a perfect example. It's those awkward or funny moments that help things stick in your mind. I once told someone, I am boring, when I meant to say, I am bored. Big difference. One means I'm not interesting, and the other means I don't have anything to do. The person just smiled at me, and I realized I had basically insulted myself.
See, these little mistakes are actually gifts. They help you learn faster.
And here's a pro tip. Don't compare yourself to others. Some people might pick up English faster, but that doesn't mean you're behind. Everyone's journey is different. Some people might learn better by listening, others by reading or speaking. Just find what works for you.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to speak, even if it's not perfect. Think about kids learning their first language. They make tons of mistakes, but no one laughs at them. They just keep trying. And eventually they get fluent.
That's so true. When you see a toddler say, "Me want cookie," instead of "I want a cookie," you don't correct them aggressively. You just understand what they mean. That's how learning works.
Right. So if you're learning English, embrace your mistakes. Laugh at them, learn from them, and move on. No one speaks perfectly all the time, not even native speakers.
Absolutely. Focus on your progress, not perfection. Because in the end, the only real mistake is being too afraid to try.
Speaking of progress, let's talk about confidence. A lot of people feel nervous or embarrassed to speak English, especially in front of others. It's completely normal to feel that way. After all, no one wants to make mistakes or be misunderstood. But here's the thing, everyone makes mistakes, even native speakers.
Exactly. And we all know that taking the first step is always the hardest. That moment when you open your mouth to speak and suddenly your brain freezes, your heart races, and you start second-guessing every word? Yeah, we've all been there. It feels like all eyes are on you, waiting for you to mess up. But in reality, most people aren't judging you at all. In fact, they usually appreciate the effort you're making.
That's so true, and you don't have to start with big conversations. Even small steps like saying, "Hello, how are you?" to a coworker or ordering food in English can make a huge difference. It's all about getting used to hearing your own voice in English and becoming comfortable with it. The more you do it, the easier it gets.
And here's a great tip. Practice with someone who's also learning. That way, you're both in the same boat, and it takes the pressure off. You can make mistakes, laugh about them, and learn together. It feels less intimidating than speaking with someone who's fluent.
Absolutely, and if you don't have someone to practice with, talk to yourself in English. It might sound a little silly, but it works wonders. Try narrating what you're doing. "I'm making coffee, now I'm adding sugar. Oh no, I added too much." It helps train your brain to think in English naturally.
And don't forget about technology. You can record yourself speaking and play it back to hear how you sound, or use voice-to-text apps to see if your pronunciation is clear enough for the app to understand you.
That's a great idea. Also, don't be afraid to use English in real situations. If you travel even a little, try speaking to people in English. If you're at a restaurant, order in English. The more you put yourself in situations where you have to speak, the more confident you'll become.
Exactly. And remember, confidence doesn't mean you never make mistakes. It means you don't let mistakes stop you. So if you say something wrong, just smile, correct yourself, and keep going. That's what learning is all about.
I love that. So, if you're listening to this and feeling nervous about speaking English, just start small, be kind to yourself, and keep practicing. Confidence comes with time, and trust me, it's worth it.
Now, let's talk about some fun ways to improve your English. Emma, what's your go-to method?
I love watching movies and TV shows in English. It's such a great way to learn new words, practice listening, and get used to how people speak naturally. Plus, you start picking up slang and common expressions without even realizing it.
Same here. And if you're feeling brave, try turning off the subtitles. At first, it might feel like you don't understand anything, but over time, your brain starts catching on. It forces you to really focus on the sounds and rhythms of the language. One trick I used was watching a movie I'd already seen in my native language, but this time in English. Since I already knew the storyline, I could focus on the words instead of trying to figure out what was happening.
That's a great tip. Another thing I love is listening to podcasts like this one. Seriously, podcasts are amazing because you can learn while doing other things like commuting, cooking, or even working out. And the best part? You get to hear how real conversations flow naturally with all the pauses, filler words, and expressions that textbooks don't always teach you.
Exactly. And don't forget about music. Singing along to your favorite English songs is a fun way to practice pronunciation and learn new phrases. Have you ever misheard song lyrics and thought they said something completely different?
Oh, all the time. Sometimes I'd sing along confidently only to realize later that I was totally butchering the words. But hey, that's part of the learning process. Plus, music helps with rhythm and intonation, which makes speaking English sound more natural.
Another fun way to improve is by playing word games. Apps like Scrabble, Wordle, or even crossword puzzles help you learn new vocabulary while having fun. And if you're into gaming, try playing video games in English. You'd be surprised how much language you pick up just by reading instructions, chatting with other players, or following the storyline in an RPG.
And one more thing, keep a journal in English. Write a few sentences every day about what you did, how you're feeling, or even something random that happened. It's a great way to practice writing, and when you look back after a few months, you'll see how much you've improved. And don't stress about making mistakes. Just write as if you're talking to a friend.
That's a great mindset. The more you use English in your daily life, the faster you'll improve. Talk to yourself in English, think in English, and if possible, find a language buddy to practice with.
And most importantly, have fun with it. The best way to learn a language is to enjoy the process. So try new things, make mistakes, and don't be afraid to sound silly.
Yes, learning English is a journey and every little step counts. If you're listening to this and thinking, wow, I actually understood most of what they said, that means you're already improving. Keep going.
And comment below if we've boosted your confidence. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Hooray for first-time listeners! Cheers to you and let us know your progress in the comment section. Before we wrap up, let's talk about accents. A lot of people worry about not sounding like a native speaker, but honestly, your accent is part of who you are. It tells a story about where you come from, your experiences, and even the languages you speak. So instead of seeing it as something to fix, think of it as something to embrace.
Exactly. Your accent is what makes you unique, and in many cases, it even makes you more memorable. Have you ever met someone with a charming French or Italian accent? People love that. As long as people can understand you, that's what really matters. Clear communication is the goal, not sounding like a Hollywood actor.
And here's a secret. Even native speakers have accents. A person from Texas sounds completely different from someone from London, and someone from Australia has a totally different accent from someone in New York. Even within the same country, you'll hear different ways of speaking. There's no single right way to speak English.
And let's not forget, accents aren't a sign of weakness, they're a sign of strength. They mean you've learned another language, which is something to be proud of. Many of the world's greatest leaders, scientists, and entrepreneurs speak English with an accent, and it hasn't stopped them from being successful.
So don't stress about sounding perfect. Focus on being clear, confident, and yourself. The more you practice, the more natural you'll sound, but don't lose what makes you, you. Your accent is proof of your journey, and that's something worth celebrating.
And don't forget, mistakes are proof that you're trying. So keep going, keep learning, and most importantly, have fun with it.
Every word you learn, every sentence you speak, is a step forward. Celebrate your progress, no matter how small. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode. Until then, keep practicing and believing in yourself.
Until next time.